The following presentation is a production of Ride the Wave Media.
We are those guys. We hope to be your guys, bringing you the latest from the National Football League. Nick Ferguson with me, former 10-year NFL safety. We've got one preseason game in the books, which means it's time to overreact. The sky is falling for Minnesota Vikings fans. Nick Ferguson, what's going on, my man?
Nothing, man. It's all good in the hood, as they would say.
Well, that's until we bring in a great friend of ours to discuss one of your heated division rivals, his Las Vegas Raiders. Now that brings us to, Nick, every episode we preview an NFL team coming into the season where the record is 0-0, expectations are high, and none higher, I think, than an interesting team that we don't know so much about in the Las Vegas Raiders. So who better than to bring in than our very own Ryan McBain, who joins us as part of Ride the Waves. What's up, Ryan? Game-related with Just Blaine, who we had on to preview his Pittsburgh Steelers. Just check that out on the Those Guys podcast feed or on YouTube. And you can also catch him on Twitch. Ryan McBain, a great watch, especially when he's playing horror games, but he can get into that on Game-related. Ryan, what's happening? What's good with your Raiders?
My expectations are not very high.
Okay.
Personally, I think I would be happy if they just won, I'd say 7 or 8 games. Problem is they don't have a quarterback.
Okay.
I like Gardner Minshew, but he's a backup. He's not bad, but it's just he could probably get you a couple games here and there. But to carry a team, I don't really see that happening. I'm very frustrated with the Raiders. It kind of started happening after they got rid of John Gruden. And then they had their guy with Bisaccia, who not only knocked out the Chargers, which made me very, very happy. That was my Super Bowl. They got within a play away from beating the Bengals in the playoffs. The same Bengals that went to the Super Bowl.
Right.
And what does Mark Davis do? He lets them go and brings in Josh McDaniels. The same Josh McDaniels that blew multiple leads and also lost to a high school coach, a.k.a. Jeff Saturday. The Colts. It just baffles my mind. So then when they brought in Pierce, and the team was just recharged. The team apparently hated Josh McDaniels. They were smoking stogies after wins.
That's a tradition of excellence, right?
Yes, exactly. But they love Pierce so much so on Christmas they beat the Chiefs, which was beautiful to me. They had Taylor Swift crying. Literally, she was crying.
That's your Super Bowl right there.
That was my Super Bowl that year. So, I mean, the Raiders are going to play hard, but I don't see them winning more than, I'd say, 8 games with that quarterback.
Well, they won 8 games. Yeah, you first, Nick.
Hold on for a second, Alex.
I was going to kick it to you.
There's a couple of things here. It tells you a lot about the Raiders organization, everything that Ryan laid out. But you think about how far that organization, the fan base, has fallen, that the celebration in the Super Bowl is the victory over the Kansas City Chiefs. I mean, the Raiders used to stand for something of excellence. Now it's mediocrity. We are almost anything.
Yes.
Wow.
Hey, you got to keep it positive, Nick. You got to have a positive mind. You can't be walking through life being angry. You got to stay positive.
Wow.
My main concern is this. The Raiders play very, very poorly, and then Davante Adams asks for a trade. Those rumors are probably going to pick up again because honestly, if I'm Davante Adams, why would I stay with the Raiders? You're in your prime. You're one of the best wide receivers in the league. You're just wasting away. Honestly, I wouldn't be mad at him. He asked for a trade. I don't blame him.
We'll get to Davante Adams and these weapons that they have on offense. And Nick, I was going to kick it to you because with your experience, right? They failed to retain Bisaccia, who went 4-0 to finish the season as the interim coach. Mm-hmm. From your experience and having played against Antonio Pierce when you were in the league, is this just about, we didn't remove the interim tag the last time, so we should do it this time? Or is there something special you think about the brand and culture that Antonio Pierce has stamped on one of the best brands and cultures in NFL history?
Yeah, I think it goes beyond the X's and O's. It goes to the fact of here is a former player who's leading a team that's trying to revitalize and jumpstart their fan base. And it was Max Crosby, arguably the best player defensively on the Raiders team, to say, look, if Pierce is out, you might as well ship me out too.
Yeah.
And for me, that was a message to the league, because in the league, most of the time people look at former players like, you know what, you guys didn't really work that hard for what you were doing. You were God-given, right? But to have another player lead an organization and a dominated defensive player come to his aid, that should speak volumes to not just the X's and O's once again, but how Antonio Pierce kind of leads the team. And I like this because, look, I've never worn silver or black, probably never will. If they pay me enough, I might coach for them. But the whole idea is I love what Pierce stands for. It's a level of toughness. It's something that players can get behind. When you see a guy in front of the room who once sat in the seats where you sat and he was able to fire guys up, yes. So, you know what? Smoke all the stogies you want to, because that whole Patriots way with Josh McDaniels, kick rocks, it didn't work because he was trying to be Bill Belichick. There's only one Bill Belichick. And Antonio Pierce is only trying to be Antonio Pierce. That's hard-nosed football. We're going to play physical. We're going to play between the lines, and we're going to play in between the whistle. Oh, by the way, yes, he might have said something about Patrick Mahomes and, taking the head off the snake, going all Greg Williams. But as a player, you love that. You can support that coach. You get behind him. You know why? Because if the league finds you for doing something they find egregious, guess what? Most likely there's a pot of money that's going to bail you out. And every player loves that.
I just want to take a moment to say that Max Crosby is sick. He is a special individual that completely sets the tone for that entire defense. The modern NFL, Nick, and correct me if I'm wrong, is amass and collect as many pass rushers as you can, rotate them in and out so they all have fresh legs and you can go after the quarterback. Max Crosby, I don't think, really missed more than a handful of snaps a game. He's on the field more than 95% of the time, which is just unbelievably special. And you can go on tours of Allegiant Stadium, which the three of us will have to do sometime, and Max is in there putting in work. Like he was upset this offseason because there was a tour going on and he couldn't get into the weight room. Like this was over a he's insane. He's special. And I think what he does on the field kind of sets the tone for a first-year head coach and a system from Patrick Graham that just puts players in position to do your job and win. The Raiders had one of the least amounts of blitz percentages. Like they send forth the quarterback and they tell their guys on the defensive line, go in. That's no problem for Max Crosby. It's probably no problem for Christian Wilkins too, who headlines a very outstanding free agency group that we're going to get to shortly here. Ryan, you mentioned Gardner Minshew at quarterback. So I just love that they don't make things complicated. And the Raiders are just telling their opponents, here's what we're going to do. We're going to send Max Crosby, Christian Wilkins, all these guys at you, and you just have to beat us. And more often than not, those guys are going to lose those matchups to those superstars on defense. So I think the defense, which finished in middle ground, I think it was 14th, 15th, right middle of the pack, can improve. So I don't have a lot of issues with the defense and how they come in, but the offensive side of the ball has wholesale changes, which begins at the quarterback position, which begins with the first two picks they made in the draft. 3, I think, were on the offensive side of the ball, and with a brand new play caller and Luke Getsy coming from the Chicago Bears. And it's like, well, the Chicago Bears, was it the quarterback? Was it the play calling? The Raiders are going to have to figure that out now. But this is a Gardner Minshew who took over for the Colts. Again, wherever he goes, he ends up playing extended minutes with the guy in front of him getting hurt. But Gardner Minshew, I think, can feed Devontae, but there's going to be other pieces on that field, I think, more than we're used to. So, Ryan, I guess, is this a situation for Devontae that even if they continue to lose, he's happy because he'll be fed targets? Or is this about, hey, if spreading the ball helps us win, I can settle in to Vegas long term.
Personally, I think he seems like the type of player that if they keep winning, he'll be happy. But like I said, I don't see them winning more than 8 games. He's obviously going to get double teamed a lot, and I'm not really confident in the Raiders' offense. And like I said, I mean, Gardner Minshew, he's a backup. He's a very good backup, I think, but I don't see him really leading the Raiders like to the playoffs. I don't see that happening at all. I'd be happy. I'd be surprised if, during the end of the season, they're in some type of like playoff contention. That's a win for me. And I'm sorry, Nick is right. It's sad that I'd be happy with that, but you got to look at the Raiders squad. And like I said, Minshew is a backup and the Raiders need a quarterback. I'm looking forward to next year, to the next draft, and see if they can finally get a quarterback.
Nick, is the fact that they won 8 games and that they finished middle of the pack pretty much across the board, is that kind of the issue? Would you recommend a bottoming out? That way they don't end up watching 6 quarterbacks go ahead of them in the draft. What are they just gonna, I don't know, wait to see what happens with the Dallas Cowboys and, to use a Vegas line, push all their chips in for Dak Prescott next free agency? I don't like what's the answer to Ryan's problem here?
Well, the answer to Ryan's problem is something that all of us struggle with. It's called patience, right? Because where the Raiders are right now, are they in the worst possible situation they could be in from an organization standpoint? I say no. I mean, do you have your quarterback of the future? No. But like Ryan said, you do have a guy who's proven that he can win games in this league. And it's sort of like Fitzmagic, right? You need a little of that. And they happen to be in Vegas where all the magic is there. And this is probably why the Raiders decided, you know what? They probably wanted Bo Nix. But then when the Broncos took him, they said, you know what? What's the next guy?
1 pick ahead of them, by the way.
On our board, and it was Brock Bowers, who I thought even though he went to Georgia, a hell of a tight end. So you take Brock, who can threaten you down the middle, you can flex him out. He's a matchup nightmare, and you mix Jacoby Myers with Devontae Adams and quality quarterback play, you have a chance. And that's all you want. You just want an opportunity to say you can win games. And believe it or not, Ryan, obviously, I'm not a Raiders fan.
Yes, I know.
The Raiders can actually shock a lot of people because, once again, Gardner Minshew has shown as though he can win games in this league. And all you're asking for is a competent quarterback that can deliver the ball on time and rhythm. And, oh, by the way, you guys talked about Max Crosby. So if that defensive line can create pressure, they can turn the ball over, and the Raiders can surprise a lot of people.
I realize that. I know I should be patient, but honestly, I've been patient for like 20 plus years. And the Raiders are in a bad spot, I think, because they're not great, but they're not totally horrible to the point where they will get like a high draft pick.
Yes.
So they're like mediocre. So there are going to have to be teams that don't really need a quarterback in next year's draft.
Well, listen, if I can really quickly, let me circle back to something that, Alex brought up about Dak Prescott. So there's been this talk about, Jerry Jones and Dak and CD Lamb and all of that stuff. And there was a report earlier this week about Shador's son, Deion Sanders' son, possibly being selected by the Dallas Cowboys. The Cowboys already have Trey Lance. In the first preseason game, Dak didn't play. That gave them an opportunity to see more of Trey Lance. So if things fall the way that you want them to fall, Ryan, you can get your quarterback who already has experience, and his name is Dak Prescott. And I think if you get it, you'll be happy.
Listen,
I don't want no.
We did this earlier where it was 5 or 6 teams that were either going to draft a quarterback or maybe they go get Kirk Cousins. I throw Dak out there just because, there he is off in the distance. He could get $50-60 million a year from somebody on the open market. Hey, it could be Vegas. They just said goodbye to Derek Carr. They just said goodbye to Josh Jacobs, and they've got a little more money to play with. It is encouraging, though, when you move on from 2 of their offensive leaders, and I don't think the offense has taken that much of a hit. You started with Brock Bowers, and the synergy that I like with Luke Getsy, that despite it was puzzling at times, some of the play calls that Chicago had, their base offense, the 12 personnel, they're among one of the top teams that deployed 2 tight ends, and they spent high draft picks. Brock Bowers, 13th overall. And I don't want to forget Michael Mayer. Stand up for Notre Dame. That is going to be a factor in this offense. If the Raiders put out their 3-4 best receivers out on the field, that's not 4 wide receivers. That's 2 receivers and 2 tight ends. So they're going to be bigger on offense, with the exception of, according to Max Crosby, that little guy at quarterback. And they're going to be bigger on the offensive line too, because after Brock Bowers, they took Jackson Powers-Johnson, who's slotted to play left guard, coming out of Oregon, who played 4 positions on the offensive line. And they also retained some of their interior line players, and they brought back, Andre James is back, and Cody Whitehair is coming over. So they've got bodies, and they can withstand a little more wear and tear over the course of the season, so that hopefully there is no bottoming out, and this team still can somewhat stay competitive. Now, Ryan, I'm encouraged that despite seeing so many guys leaving, and the word is encouraged because without any real evidence of what the hell this team is, I'm just going to go glass half full. Maybe that's because I haven't been watching them for the last 20 years like you have, but I would just like to say that, the Chargers aren't going to be in their way. The Denver Broncos haven't beaten them in 5 years. And the last time they played the Kansas City Chiefs, they beat them on Christmas Day, as you so glowingly told us.
Yes, true.
So I feel as if within the AFC West, they've got a puncher's chance in every one of those games and should be favored against a Chargers squad. And I guess this is my last thought, because as much as I would love, for your sake, to just talk about what a depleted roster the Chargers were, the treasure chest of, young players and building the weapons around Justin Herbert, as much as I want to, talk bad about it, Tom Telesco, within like a week of being fired, was brought in to be the Raiders GM. And I'm just curious about the pairing with Antonio Pierce long term. I think it's kind of interesting from a philosophical standpoint. And at least the first check that I have was just going BPA, taking Brock Bowers as the best player available, rather than sacrificing all the draft picks to try to move up for one of those quarterbacks. So I guess if I like the offseason, the future long-term outlook with this Pierce and Telesco pairing, Ryan, what would you like to see from this team? Maybe Nick, you can chime in as well. Just kind of the overall direction. Is this really just keep the ship afloat? That the autumn wind, the Raiders are a pirate. Keep this ship afloat until they find a quarterback. I mean, what are some things you want to look for this season, even if it's not elite quarterback play?
Oh, I know it can't get much worse when it comes to drafting players. You mentioned CeeDee Lamb. The Raiders could have drafted CeeDee Lamb. Instead, they drafted a guy named Henry Ruggs, who's in jail right now. So as long as they hit on the draft and their picks, are playing well, maybe Devontae Adams doesn't want to leave, and they keep it afloat, and then they can get a decent quarterback in the draft, and we'll see what happens. So I will be optimistic in that way. That's the only thing I have going for me.
Well, I'll say this. Here's what I think that the Raiders are looking at. There's a model out there in the NFL, and if you can, I guess, get the pieces aligned and get everyone to play, you can become this team. And the team I'm talking about, San Francisco 49ers. Because when you think about how the Niners are built, they built getting after other teams, being fast on the first and second level of their defense, also running the ball and having a balanced attack, but also having a competent quarterback. Now, once again, I'm not saying that, Gardner Minshew needs to be Brock Purdy, because Brock Purdy, as we all know, was Mr. Irrelevant. No one really gave him a chance, but he had pieces around him. And when you look at what the Raiders have built, they have started to put pieces around their quarterback, because the idea is that, we're not going to go to the Super Bowl this year. We're going to be competitive. And just so happens, if certain plays break our way, we are well equipped to take advantage of it because, okay, like you said, no more Josh Jacobs. So Zamir White is proven to be a decent running back. You add Alexander Madison to the mix, who's shown as though he could be a physical back. He could be a change of pace back. You got Brock Bowers, Jacoby Myers, and Devontae Adams. So you have some pieces. And the whole idea is that when you look at the division, you hit on the Denver Broncos. We don't know who's going to be the starting quarterback. And even with that being said, the team is very young. So everyone's looking past the Denver Broncos. You look at Justin Herbert. He's hurt for a couple of games, right? The Raiders could creep up on someone and really shock them and put themselves in a position where it's a win-and-go-home situation. And we know how that works. So this is, and I can't believe I'm actually giving you this much validation, but this is the way I see football. This is the way I see things for the Raiders, that this can actually happen for them.
So, Ryan, to wrap things up, we do this with every of our season previews. We're looking for the floor for your Vegas Raiders and the ceiling, the expectations of what happens when things break your way, like Nick Ferguson is obviously hoping for, and what is going to happen if things don't go as well. We'll start with the floor for these Raiders.
The floor is probably 5 wins, and then Devontae Adams saying, "I want out. Get me out of here."
Yeah, watching Receiver on Netflix.
Yes, exactly. Yes. The ceiling is the Raiders somehow making it to the playoffs as a wild card. That happens. I'm like, okay, I'm that would make me very, very happy.
Wow. All right. So
I mean, just being honest.
Listen, man,
and again, I'm just saying, you've got a Week 18 matchup at home against the Chargers. It can be like 2021 all over again.
So
even
beautiful.
if you've got nothing to play for and they have everything to play for, you can at least play spoilers. That at least sounds exciting to me. Although it is kind of crazy. I have the schedule in front of me. They get Denver and Kansas City weeks 12 and 13 respectively. And then, they go over a month, about 6 weeks before their next and final division game. So not as exciting as you would have hoped. Maybe that's why the Pittsburgh Steelers are the ones that get the Hard Knocks episodes.
Well, I'll say this. With the Raiders, either you're going 7-10 or 8-9. And I'm leaning more towards maybe 8-9 because a couple of field goals here and there, getting a break here and there. We know how things happen in the NFL. And they could be in a position for a wild card. So to me, that's the ceiling for this team. Getting a wild card, shocking some individuals, and going back to how tough the NFL season is. And if you have the proper depth, you can make a lot of noise because we know some of these top players who are going to start week 1 are not going to play week 10. So if you can keep Gardner Minshew upright, if you can keep your offensive players upright, then the Raiders actually have a chance because, once again, I mean, no one is giving the Denver Broncos an opportunity and the AFC West. Let's keep it real. Let's keep it 100. But if the Raiders go out and play with the same level of toughness to begin the season as they play towards the end of the season, who knows what can happen.
And that defense, Max Crosby continues to be a stud. Christian Wilkins fits in seamlessly. Tyree Wilson, the top draft pick from last year, is healthy and gets off to a quick start. Like this, the weapons apply to both sides of the football.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that we could turn Nick into the eternal optimist for this Raiders team, and I hope some of that rubs off on you.
Wait a minute. Don't make Broncos country upset with me. It's just real, recognized real. And anything
we will get to your Denver Broncos, and Ryan, I will hold it to you to say absolutely nothing nice about them when we get there.
Look, I'm just saying that I'm jealous because even though the Raiders will probably destroy the Broncos again, the Broncos have hope because they have a good quarterback. I think Bo Nix is going to be a good quarterback. So I'm jealous.
Well, Ryan, you should know all about A New Hope, right? And that's where we find ourselves right now, right? We are the New Hope battling against the Galactic Empire.
He's Nick Ferguson, former 10-year NFL safety, always with me here on Those Guys. More importantly, he's Ryan McBain. You can find him on Twitch at Ryan McBain, right here on Ride the Wave Media with Game Related with our own Just Blaine, who was here to preview his Pittsburgh Steelers. Continue to keep it locked here on those guys as we continue to do our season previews. Have our friends here from Ride the Wave Media join us to talk about their teams because, Nick, as much as we want to be experts, I think the fans are more in touch, and some, not all, some are more optimistic about their teams coming into the year. I always reserve this space for Nick, but Ryan, you are our guest. So, Ryan, before we split, this was something I discovered on Twitter today. Today was the day that Nick Ferguson saw the Boston Slide Cop video for the very first time, more than a year after it came out. So, Ryan, before we split, you think Nick has been living under a rock or what?
I mean, he's a busy guy. He's got a lot of things going on. So we can miss a few things here and there. He was also a little late on the whole Ray Gunn fiasco in the Olympics. He was a little late for that as well.
That's right.
Wait. I wasn't late. I was just being courteous.
You were waiting for the perfect time to pounce. 4 days after the Olympics end, and you just strike.
Well, listen, I was giving everyone else an opportunity to get their stuff out as I was contemplating whether I want to get involved in the conversation or not.
Oh, you had to, man. It was hilarious.
We are those guys. We will catch you next time. Keep it right here, wherever you get your podcasts or YouTube. Do the same for game related, and catch Ryan. Set up those push notifications when he goes live on Twitch. We'll have to save it for our game related crossover episode. We got to go through the top 5 jump scares for all horror games for you, Ryan. We got to do that at some point with the games you can't play with the lights turned off. Until next time, Nick, what do you have to say to the people?
Only now do you know the power of the dark side.
Raiders.
Sweet Christmas.